Think you're clever? Imagine going head to head with the devil himself and winning. Now imagine doing it twice. This isn't a fantasy. It's the legendary tale of a farmer whose sheer ingenuity allowed him to outsmart the ultimate trickster. Can you guess how he managed such an impossible feat? Watch till the end to find out, and if you haven't, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Let me know which city or country you are tuning in from. Without any further ado, let's get straight into the story. In every market from the red dust border of Kitala to the misty river towns, traders whispered of Kofi, the lean farmer who twice outsmarted the devil and walked away laughing. They said a moonless wind carried a sulfur scent the night trouble arrived. Kofi, returning from cracked maize fields, found embers glowing where no fire had been. From that glow stepped a towering figure cloaked in smoke, horns curling like blackened ram's horns, eyes the color of molten iron, with a voice as smooth as honey yet sharp as broken glass. The stranger promised untold riches, barns overflowing, livestock multiplying, and gold coins raining like seed if Kofi would simply hand over his soul in 7 harvest seasons. Lightning split distant clouds, and crickets fell silent. Kofi's heartbeat drummed louder than the insects, for his wife's dowry remained unpaid and his children coughed from hunger each dry season. Yet even as fear prickled his neck, curiosity flickered brighter. Could the devil truly be trapped by a peasant's wit? Kofi bowed, thanked the fiery guest for such generosity, and requested a single alteration, one that seemed so small the devil's smirk widened into a crescent of greedy delight. Kofi's homestead clung to a hillside where boulders jutted like ancient teeth, the soil thin and stubborn, thirsty for rains that rarely came. Every dawn he hoed rows with calloused hands, humming lullabies to distract from groaning stomachs. His neighbors pitied him, yet none saw the sharpness behind his patient smile. What Kofi lacked in coin, he owned in observation. Watching termites carve tunnels taught him where groundwater hid. Seeing vultures ride thermals revealed wind patterns for sowing. Still, ingenuity could not conjure silver for broken roof tiles or medicine for ailing livestock. The devil's offer glittered brighter than sunrise on river reeds. But Kofi loved riddles more than gold, and beneath his hunger lay a stubborn pride. No immortal bully would claim his spirit without contest. He spent a long night by a guttering oil lamp, scratching figures in dust, devising a gambit that hinged on plants' silent secrets. Some feed roots, others feed leaves, and few understand both. When light seeped over the ridge, he tucked his plan behind calm eyes and strode to the meeting point, ready to wager everything on intellect. The devil waited at Kofi's boundary stone, tapping a claw that split pebbles like eggshells. "Farmer," he purred, "sign, and 7 seasons of wealth are yours." Kofi produced a reed pen but paused. "Let us sweeten this pact," he proposed. "Each year we divide my harvest. One of us claims what grows above ground, the other what grows below. Next season we swap. Fair, no?" A shade of suspicion flickered across the devil's face, but hubris smothered it. What tricks could a barefoot tiller mount against centuries of infernal cunning? He agreed, scratching molten runes onto parchment. The document hissed as it cooled, sealing fate in smoke. Kofi dipped his pen, heart thumping, and signed. A gust extinguished his lamp, and with that, the devil vanished, leaving behind an echo of laughter and the scent of scorched grain. Kofi exhaled slow, steady. His trap was set, but execution would demand discipline every sunrise from now through harvest. Kofi tilled anew, this time planting rows upon rows of sweet potatoes, burying each slip deep in red loam. Neighbors teased him for neglecting towering maize that fetched high prices, yet he smiled, saying only that fortunes sprout in humble places. Rains arrived in silver sheets. Vines spread emerald carpets while tubers ballooned in secrecy beneath. All season the devil skulked at field edges, admiring lush foliage, imagining roasted leaves dripping with oil. At last the harvest moon rose. The devil presented baskets, talons itching to claim above-ground bounty. Kofi sliced vines, piling verdant masses high until baskets overflowed. The devil's grin faltered when he saw the wilted greens offered bitter and useless. Meanwhile, Kofi dug fat golden tubers, their earthy perfume filling the air. He hummed a cheerful tune, loading barrow after barrow. The devil's roar shook palm fronds, but a pact is a pact. He slunk away, vowing revenge when choices reversed next year. Kofi merely tipped his straw hat, potatoes gleaming like buried treasure beside him. Months passed, and gossip of Kofi's clever coup spread like wildfire, carried by harmattan winds. For the second season the devil arrived early, claws flexing. Now entitled to everything beneath the soil, he licked his lips at the thought of swollen roots. Kofi bowed again, this time planting golden wheat that thrust skyward in shimmering waves while roots remained slender threads. When harvest came, the devil spat dust, finding only dry tendrils in his share, while Kofi's granaries brimmed with grain, rich enough to bake bread for every starving child. Fury ignited the horizon red, yet the devil could not break his own word. He vanished in a whirlwind of sparks, shrieking that at the contract's final reckoning, Kofi would know true despair. As night swallowed the fields, Kofi watched sparks fade, feeling triumph and a twinge of foreboding twist together like twin vines. The first battle was won, but the war with hellfire cunning had only begun. 6 prosperous years rolled by like a cart on oiled axles, and poor earth transformed into quilted fields of bounty under Kofi's careful stewardship. Yet with each sunset the farmer's pulse quickened, for every falling petal marked another day closer to contract's end. When the 7th planting season dawned, a hush settled over Kitala. Children played quietly, elders lit protective incense, and Kofi tended his fields with measured breaths, ears tuned for the faintest hiss of brimstone. One humid dusk, thunderheads formed, though no storm was forecast. Lightning cracked open the horizon, casting purple light on a familiar towering silhouette. The devil stood at Kofi's gate, smoke wending around iron-clawed feet, parchment fluttering in hand like a vulture's wing. "Your term expires at moonrise," he rasped, voice a forge bellows. "I have tasted humiliation twice. Tonight, I dine on victory." Kofi straightened, dusting flour off his palms. He'd been baking bread for orphans, and answered evenly, "A promise is a promise, but where's the sport in easy spoil? Grant me one final contest. If I win, freedom. If I lose, I follow you without argument." Intrigued, the devil's smirk revealed jagged onyx teeth. Pride warred with suspicion, yet ego prevailed. He signaled assent, flames flickering from nostrils, eager to crush the mortal once and for all. Kofi's neighbors watched from darkened doorways as the unlikely adversaries strode toward the far meadow bathed in indigo twilight, where destiny would hinge on a race of labor rather than strength of arm. Kofi halted beside a plot recently tilled but left unplanted, its soil moist and friable after late-season rains. He drew a line in the earth with the heel of his worn sandal, then explained the contest. "At sunrise we each must carve this. Expanse into perfect straight rows, no weed left unturned, no furrow crooked. First to finish wins." The devil laughed, a cavernous sound that sent egrets scattering. "Claws sharper than your finest steel, do you give me tasks fit for infants?" Kofi raised a placating hand. "You may use any power you possess. Yet grant me one courtesy. When either of us completes our work, we will signal the other by blowing a horn. Mine must be large enough that even hell's sentries hear the note." Amused by the dramatic flourish, the devil conjured a horn from a ram so colossal its curl could cradle 3 men. Polished obsidian gleamed beneath flickering torchlight. Kofi bowed his thanks, hoisting the massive instrument with surprising ease, though he did not attempt a note, instead resting it on a tree stump overlooking the meadow. The devil inspected the field, claws flexing, confident no mortal could outrun demon speed. Satisfied, he agreed to Dawn's start. Kofi's hidden smile flashed only once in torch shadow. His plan relied on the fiend's arrogance, not physical endurance. He spent the remaining night under a baobab, carving a slender reed whistle, testing its high tone beneath the cricket's chorus before tucking it safely behind his ear. Rosy daybreak gilded the meadow as contest commenced. The devil lunged, low, claws tilling 6 furrows at a swipe, tail plowing parallel trenches, sparks hissing where iron met stone. Earth churned like water under hammering rain. Kofi, meanwhile, ambled to the far corner, a lone silhouette against sunrise, inspecting soil with leisurely pokes of his staff. Villagers who dared watch from distant hedges whispered that fear had finally broken the farmer's nerve. The devil's confidence swelled. By mid-morning he'd sculpted half the plot into ruler-straight beds. He glanced up to gloat, noticing Kofi crouched beside the horn, apparently whittling idle designs on its rim. Irritation flared, yet pride insisted on finishing before mocking the farmer. Noon's heat rose. Sweat steamed off demonic hide. Kofi shaded his eyes, surveying sky as if reading cloud patterns, never lifting a tool. Frustration gnawed the devil, but he pushed harder, soil flying in black crescents. Clouds thickened toward late afternoon. Distant thunder rumbled like hooves. Kofi remained a watchful statue, whistle unseen behind his ear. The devil could almost taste victory's sweetness. Just 3 furrows remained between him and eternal claim on Kofi's soul. When the final ridge smoothed beneath claw, the devil roared triumph, wheeling toward the farmer only to freeze. Kofi had not sounded the horn. Instead he raised the tiny reed whistle, pressing it to his lips. A shrill tweet like a sparrow's call sliced the humid air. "What game is this?" The devil snarled, veins pulsing ember red. Kofi replied calmly, "Our agreement was clear. Whoever completes the task signals with a horn. You provided this magnificent beast of an instrument, yet you never specified whose breath must sound it." Confusion wrinkled the devil's brow. As Kofi continued, "I cannot possibly blow such a gargantuan horn. Therefore, when I finish, you must do so for me. The whistle is merely to alert you that my part is done." Rage flashed crimson. "You finished? Impossible." Kofi gestured across the meadow to rows still wild. "Those are mine?" "Nay, I claim the untouched ground beyond the acacia grove." He pointed where faint dawn lines he'd scratched. Before sunrise lay completed by nature's own gentle rain runoff, channeling perfect rows overnight. The devil had never inspected that quadrant, assuming the central meadow was the battlefield. Kofi's cunning assumption of boundaries and the devil's haste became the decisive stroke. Now contract insisted the defeated demon blow the horn, admitting loss. Trembling, the devil lifted the massive instrument. A reverberating bellow rolled across valleys, heard by shepherds miles away. Its echo sealed Kofi's freedom as infernal runes on the original pact dissolved like ash in drizzle. Lightning forked, tying sky to earth as the devil shrank beneath the weight of self-inflicted humiliation. Flames sputtered at his hooves, eyes dimming from searing ember to dull coal. "Twice you've undone me," he rasped, voice cracked. "What mortal thrives against fate so?" Kofi met the gaze, not with mockery but quiet strength. "A mortal who observes, adapts, and refuses fear," he answered. With one final hiss of scorching wind, the creature vanished, leaving behind tilled soil rich for planting and a horn black as night embedded tip first in ground, a monument to pride's downfall. Clouds parted. Sunset glimmered on rows that would sprout millet for the hungry. Villagers rushed forth, some weeping gratitude, others awed by Kofi's cool daring. He bade them save their praise for seedlings and shared labor, reminding all that cleverness without generosity withers like unwatered maize. That night, drums echoed across Kitala as fires crackled. Elders retold the day's events so each ember carried new wisdom into starlit sky. Strength bends to cunning. Arrogance bows to patience. Kofi stood at his threshold, shadow crisp beneath, moonlight whole, free, and resolved that his greatest harvest would never again be counted in gold, but in shared bread and lessons learned. The weeks after the Devil's Horn blast felt at first like a bright new dawn. Yet Kofi soon noticed the soil beneath his victorious meadow crusting over as if scorched from within. Seedlings that should have burst into green lay pale and brittle, and a rancid smell seeped from the furrows once tilled by infernal claws. In the market, gossip swirled that the devil's rage had cursed the earth itself, and that any harvest born of his labor would poison those who ate it. Mothers tugged children away when Kofi appeared. Merchants weighed grain he offered, but sold it only as chicken feed, fearful of unseen taint. By moonlight, Kofi walked the blighted rows, hearing faint echoing groans rise from the cracked crust, as though trapped souls wept beneath. Despite his freedom, he realized the contract's residue had latched onto his land and, worse, onto his spirit, for each night his dreams replayed the devil's roar, embedding dread like burrs under skin. Gold stored in his granary could not buy trust, and bread shared with orphans lost all savor when he feared it carried hidden sorrow. Victory, he understood, had been won by twisting rules. The devil, beaten, had saluted with scorched earth instead of chains. The true cost was blooming now, a creeping rot of mistrust, a farm no longer alive, and the gnawing thought that trickery, however clever, had invited darkness to stay. By the second month, drought clouds thickened above Kitala. The weather spirits had promised gentle rains. Kofi's goats refused to graze the cursed pasture, stamping nervous circles whenever he led them near. The village chief convened a council, where elders debated whether to exile Kofi before contagion of devilish misfortune spread to human flesh. Though some argued for gratitude, citing potatoes and wheat that once fed them, fear's whisper won many hearts. Kofi was asked to speak, and his voice trembled only once as he admitted he felt hollow, as if a shadow of brimstone still clung to his heels. He ended his plea with a vow. He would seek a cleansing deeper than any river bath or incense smoke, traveling until he discovered how to restore life to valley and soul alike. The council granted him one season's grace. If by first planting moon the blight remained, they would torch the meadow and banish him beyond the hills. That night, Kofi packed a cloth sack with ground nuts, a gourd of water, and a coil of the devil's horn, its obsidian surface now dull, but humming faintly with what felt like trapped thunder. At dawn he left the farm in the care of his eldest daughter, her eyes glossy with fear yet standing tall. He kissed her brow, reminding her that wisdom is planted deepest when watered by courage, and set off down the trade road, seeking any sage or seer who could read curses carved by infernal pride. 3 hard-trodden weeks led Kofi to a plateau, where ancient baobabs bore ritual scars older than dynasties. There he found Nana Liso, an herbalist rumored to hear the language of stones. Beneath a canopy of weaver bird nests, she invited him to recount every detail, stirring a pot of bitter bark tea whose steam etched ghostly glyphs in air. When Kofi finished, Nana Liso dipped a finger into the tea and flicked droplets onto the devil's horn. Sparks hissed, then died, releasing a whiff of sulfur and gardenia. "Your victory severed the devil's grip on your soul," she intoned, "but not on his own handiwork. Those plowed furrows are tethered to him, doorways through which his resentment seeps. Cleanse the door, cleanse the land," she instructed. Kofi to return, uproot the entire cursed field, and replant it with a trinity of life-binding crops, calabash, cowpea, and marigold, each representing rebirth, nourishment, and protection. Yet the ritual demanded blood not of sacrifice, but of repentance. Kofi must mix soil with ashes from the horn ground to dust, symbolically grinding the devil's pride beneath humble mortar. Only then, under first light of planting moon, should he whistle a single clear note across the furrows to invite benevolent spirits. Kofi nodded, sensing daunting labor yet feeling the first ember of hope. Nana Liso gave him pestle and mortar carved from fallen baobab heartwood, whispered blessings into his travel cloak, and sent him back along starlit trails humming prayers older than the devil's first lie. Upon his return, Kofi found the meadow darker than memory, weeds wilted as though shunning the soil. He gathered his family and closest neighbors, explaining Nana Liso's instructions. Some balked at grinding the horn, fearing it might provoke the devil further, but Kofi's quiet conviction stirred courage. After a cleansing bath in river silt, they formed a circle around a stone slab. With steady arms, Kofi pounded the horn. Each strike released sparks that fizzled into harmless gray powder, and each echo felt lighter than the last, as if invisible shackles snapped. Mixing ash with soil, they spread it across the furrows, chanting a song Kofi improvised about humility over cunning. Next they planted calabash along borders, cowpea in center rows, marigold at every corner. Sweat dripped, muscles ached, but no one stopped until twilight painted the sky apricot and purple. Kofi slept near the field under a reed mat, pulse slow. Dreams silent for the first time in months. At pre-dawn, a cool breeze rustled new leaves. He rose, placed Nana Liso's whistle to his lips, and released a single pure tone that floated over dew-tipped seedlings. A hush followed, then cicadas resumed, and the earth beneath his feet vibrated with a gentle thrum like a distant drum. Welcoming dancers. By planting Moon's third week, a marvel unfolded. Calabash vines coiled in thick emerald ropes. Cowpea pods dangled fat and purple speckled. Marigold crowns blazed orange suns warding pests. Goats grazed contentedly at field edges without fear, and the rancid odor vanished, replaced by the scent of damp foliage. Villagers gathered, eyes wide, some kneeling to press palms into rejuvenated soil. The chief declared Kofi's grace fulfilled, and lifted any hint of exile. Children, remembering whispered fears, now played tag along the once blighted rows. At dusk, Kofi stood where the horn had embedded. Only a shallow depression remained, sprouting marigold blooms. He felt the land breathing with him, sorrow and arrogance both composted into fertile humus. Yet he knew another test awaited. The devil's humiliation might still hunger for retribution, and only unwavering humility could guard against future lures. He gazed toward the horizon's bruised line, resolved to tend his reborn fields with wisdom gleaned from pain, ready to teach others that cleverness without conscience is but a seed cast on stone. Peace reigned through 2 harvests until one sultry evening when air thickened and birds fell abruptly silent. Kofi, surveying drying cowpea stalks, sensed a familiar static charge. A fissure of crimson lightning split the sky, and from the flash stepped Ebel, the devil's niece whose earlier enticement he had spurned. Her horns small yet polished, she bore parchment swirling with live embers. "Uncle Brood's farmer," she sneered. "He concedes defeat but demands compensation. Trick him once, shame on him. Twice, shame amplified. A third contest shall decide whether your lineage prospers or perishes." Kofi's stomach chilled, yet he inhaled slow. He had expected some echo of hellish pride to return. "I deny no challenge," he replied, "but stakes must balance." Ebel unfurled parchment. Runes glowed like coals. If Kofi lost, not only his soul but the meadow and seed banks would crumble to dust. If he won, the devil's dominion must leave the region forever. Kofi asked one night to ponder. Ebel agreed, vanishing with a twirl of embers that singed marigold petals. Under moonlight, Kofi paced, recalling Nana Liso's counsel. Pride attracts darkness as surely as honey draws ants. This time cunning alone might not suffice. He needed strategy rooted in community, humility, and faith. At dawn, Kofi assembled elders, children, and traders alike beneath the threshing barn. He recounted Ebel's ultimatum and proposed a contest. Founded on collaboration, a communal riddle with answer known only if they pooled perspectives ensuring victory, credited not to one clever farmer, but to collective wisdom that demons underestimate. They brainstormed legends, proverbs, seasonal cycles, forging a riddle of 3 parts. One line referencing dawn millet shadows, another river flood timing, a third the star cluster shepherds follow in dry months. Together they memorized answer and devised presentation. Kofi alone would stand before Ebel, but villagers would ring distant drumbeats, providing coded hints, audible only to human ears. In this way, triumph would rest on shared heritage rather than individual brilliance, undercutting the devil's narrative of solitary ego. Night fell. Drums practiced hush-soft rhythms. Cows shifted anxiously, yet spirits felt fortified by unity. Kofi knelt beside the meadow, pressing palm to soil once cursed, whispering gratitude and pleading ancestors to guard hearts from arrogance. Ebel returned as shadows lengthened, parchment now edged with icy rime, signaling hell's impatience. She proposed her game, a single riddle solve or forfeit all. Kofi countered, offering their communal challenge in exchange. Curiosity sparked in her red pupils. Demons revel in puzzles. She consented, claws tapping rhythm on charred ground. Abel's riddle came first. I glide without wings, cry without tears, die in stillness, what am I? Drums thumped thrice. From the distant barn, code for wind. Kofi answered, the breeze. Ebel's grin faltered. Then Kofi posed the village riddle. Drumbeats provided subtle cues. A quick triple, a rolling five, a final thunder. Ebel's brow furrowed. Time stretched taut. She paced, tasting air, scanning stars she scarcely studied. Seconds before moon apex, she snarled inability. Kofi declared victory. Suddenly runes on parchment sputtered out, and an invisible tremor shook the ground as some territorial tether snapped. Ebel hissed fury, yet, bound by infernal law, she dissolved into sparks swept westward by cooling wind. When dawn tinted acacia leaves silver, a palpable lightness lingered in the village. Dogs barked freely, babies laughed. Kofi gathered everyone at the meadow, recounting how collective thought outshone demon cunning. He knelt, inviting the youngest, orphan, to plant the season's first seed, symbolizing inherited guardianship against future darkness. As hoes chopped rhythmically, he felt zero prideful swell, only calm satisfaction that community had matured beyond reliance on lone heroes. Traders pledged a yearly wisdom day where trickster tales would be debated to sharpen minds. Women chalked protective symbols onto granary walls. Youths composed new songs praising harmony over individual glory. That night a meteor shower glittered. Elders interpreted it as demons fleeing, scattering like sparks from a quenched forge. Weeks later, Kofi revisited Nana Liso, presenting marigold seeds bred from once cursed soil, now vigorous and orange. She smiled, grinding them into salve for drought-cracked skin, remarking that transformation is the deepest magic. On his journey home, Kofi paused at the crossroads shrine where the horn once lay buried. Tiny marigold shoots sprouted around the stone, thriving on humility's compost. He realized the devil's wars had gifted him and his people awareness. Temptation returns in cycles, but shared vigilance and grounded hearts deflect its claws. Carrying that understanding, Kofi walked the trade road beneath setting sun. Shadow long yet light, stretching ahead like a guide rather than a burden. Months passed with no infernal sign, harvests overflowing in colors once unimaginable. Kofi stepped back from leadership, urging younger farmers to innovate beyond his own methods. He taught them to map wind, save seed, and most importantly, to debate openly about potential shortcuts attractive during scarcity. In the evenings, he sat outside the schoolhouse built from the devil's plow field bricks, listening as children recited riddles about greed and grace. He felt no restless need to prove cleverness. Instead, he found contentment in watching minds grow resilient. A traveling bard arrived, seeking permission to spread the saga of Kofi's triple triumph. Kofi agreed on one condition: emphasize not the devil's foolishness nor his own brilliance, but the evolving moral brains tempered by humility forged the strongest shield. In the provincial capital, scholars inscribed the Kofi Codex, a compilation of agricultural wisdom, ethical case studies, and strategic thinking exercises inspired by his deeds. It became mandatory reading for apprentices across kingdoms. Kofi attended the inaugural lecture, quietly seated in the back. The professor concluded by noting how Kofi's final victory arose from communal synergy, proof that shared intellect surpasses solitary genius. Students craned necks to glimpse the modest farmer, but Kofi slipped out early, preferring oxen lowing to applause. Along the corridor, he overheard debate. Could cunning ever be virtuous? He smiled, satisfied the next generation would wrestle with that nuance long after he faded to legend. One crisp dawn, Kofi felt age tugging heavier than seed sacks. He summoned his children to distribute land equally, instructing them to maintain the Trinity crop rotation as living monument. He gave the devil's horn dust in a clay jar to the village healer, who mixed it into paint for protective door sigils, transforming curse residue into warding blessing. Finally, Kofi carried the baobab mortar to the crossroads shrine, placing it beside marigold blossoms. He traced a circle in dust, murmured thanks to every spirit, dark or light, that had taught him. A breeze swirled petals around his feet like confetti. He sensed no lurking dread, only equilibrium. That evening the sky blazed copper, and villagers gathered for the annual Festival of Twin Triumphs, now renamed Festival of Unified Shadows. New verses praised not just Kofi, but those who drummed clues and tilled cursed fields into gardens. Kofi was asked to strike the opening drum, symbolizing rhythm of shared vigilance. When his mallet met hide, a deep note rolled across plains, mingling with laughter and flute. Elders declared that from this year forward, any child reaching 16 must present a riddle to the council, ensuring wit remained community currency against unseen devils. Kofi watched torchlight dance. His once heavy shadow joined other silhouettes in easy fellowship, indistinguishable, equal. Long after Kofi's passing, travelers resting at Kitala still pause by a weathered stone etched with marigold petals and a tiny reed whistle. They hear villagers recount how a farmer bested darkness thrice, yet his greatest feat was converting personal triumph into collective wisdom. Merchants carry the tale along caravan trails, reminding listeners that offers glittering like midday sun may cast the longest shadows, and that a single clever mind, when paired with humble heart and helping hands, can outshine any devilish scheme. Thus, Kofi's legacy endures, fields thriving, rituals of reflection alive, and a simple whistles note echoing across generations, inviting every ear to question, observe, and choose the path where conscience grows richer than gold. What would you sacrifice for instant fortune? And how would you guard against regret? Share your thoughts below, and if these tales spark reflection, subscribe for more African folktales that challenge desire, celebrate ingenuity, and honor community wisdom.